Can you imagine going from being on a high of your company being worth over $750 million to less than 1 year later having to sell that company or its assets for only £3.4 million?
Insane.
Collapse in value. How the mighty fall.
Yeah. Welcome to the Dan Bradbury Podcast, episode 190. Do you realize we are 10 episodes away from? Is this the bicentennial? What do you call the 200th episode?
The 200th episode.
The 200th episode.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to do something special for that one. Bring in a marching band.
Well, this is kind of
dancers, maybe a smoke machine.
I've got too many images in my head. This is why you don't let tofu loose on your budget. All right, so it's a very special episode where we're at anyway.
Yes, we're at Mill Street Studios. Yes, Mill Street Studios. Do I say acquaintance, friend, best friend? I don't want to oversell it.
Yeah. Well, so friend.
Yes.
So if you're listening on audio, this is lost on you. You need to go to YouTube and check out the
and subscribe and like and give us a 5-star review.
But yes, we are in a special, very special studio, the podcast studio at 1 Mill Street, which is owned by my friend Nigel Shanahan, who was on episode 153. Bit of a punt in the dark.
And our guest at your last mastermind, or no, not the last one, 2 masterminds ago, he was one of your guest speakers, an amazing man, gave so much value, people loved him, and this is his place, and this is a great studio, so I'm glad to be here, for sure.
In many ways, you could say, I don't know, we'll try and lobby him, because I've seen him walking around today, we'll try and pull him in, perhaps, at some point, because this is the proceeds, or part of the proceeds of his company exit, so in that podcast episode we released earlier this year, Tofu, with Nigel, he spoke about how he scaled his company, how he basically the company folded. He'd raised some money. It was at the point of bankruptcy, so much that the PE firm or the backers just wanted their money back and were happy to give him the shares.
Really?
Yeah. And
I didn't know this part.
Yeah. Well, it's in the podcast episode. So look back, just search for the Dan Bradbury Podcast and Nigel Shanahan.
But that was before me.
I wasn't going to embarrass you, but you were actually present during the recording of that episode.
What?
Yeah, because it was at the Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition. We took his presentation and put it on the podcast.
Okay. That's slightly different.
No, you're not getting it out of this.
You are correct.
No,
I was present.
You've heard the story about how his company, they tried one route and they ran out of money.
That's
and
right.
The VCs were just going to say put it into bankruptcy, and he decided to decided to give them their money back, and he had to beg, borrow, and steal, and he borrowed money from his parents. Do you remember?
Yes, that's right. But to be fair, when I'm hosting the mastermind, my brain's elsewhere. I'm not really paying attention to the content as much, so that's going to be my back out.
Yeah, well, all right, fine. But for those listening, he begged, borrowed, and steal to get the company, and then very quickly he managed to scale it up, and he exited it for £52 million. Pounds, not dollars, even though they're about the same thing in today's currency.
Right nowadays. How does that make you feel?
I don't want to talk about it. In cash, and so one of the things that he did, because he's kind of, I don't want to say semi-retired, I'm not sure he'd like that, but he's definitely kind of enjoying life.
Yeah.
And one of the things he wanted to create a bit of a legacy was he bought this building and has transformed it. 1 Mill Street.
Far and away the coolest collaborative office space I've ever seen. I mean, in fact, I was describing it to a friend last night. I said, he has trees inside his building. I go, but not cheap, stupid trees, like Disney or Rainforest Cafe quality trees
it does
in
feel,
the studio, right? It's
actually, Disney-esque is misleading because people are now imagining giant mice and
there's no characters, but I mean the trees are amazing inside the building.
You're right, Tova. I obviously collaborative space is rapidly increasing, especially since the pandemic, but this which, by the way, he built this space and it opened, I think it was in January 2020, so they basically opened and we're like, oh yeah, okay, now we're closed. But it's a great job, because if you are in Leamington Spa,
I was going to say we should actually plug it. It's in Leamington Spa. It's called 1 Mill Street. 1
Mill Street. The number one. And then
millstreet.com. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, come on down. It's cool. And inside of here, they've got a phenomenal podcast studio.
Yeah, it's cool.
And actually, I haven't asked his permission, so I won't say how much money. But let's just say I guesstimated how much money he spent on the studio, and I'm not naive when it comes to the cost of things.
Yeah.
And he went, "Oh yeah, it costs this number," and I misheard him, and I was out by like 5x.
Yeah.
So it's uber
beautiful.
high quality.
Yeah, he's done a great job.
Unfortunately, it's not going to make the content any better. It's still you and me.
Still you and me.
Just in
By the
real
way,
high quality.
Speaking about the content, I will tell you that I'm running on about 2 hours sleep from last night. Not tired now, thankfully, because they have great coffee here at One Mill Street as well. But I am hurting. I've got about 2 hours sleep on me, and while I am not the kind of person who likes to blame people, I'm going to say that clearly, it's your fault.
Thank you.
Well, and here's why it's your fault. Because first off, we should a little backup. We're in person. This is not a Zoom call podcast like we typically do. We're in the same room together, which is awesome because I'm in the UK, I'm in Leamington Spa, and I'm here with Chad, your marketing manager.
One-time hero of the week on the Dan Bradbury Podcast.
Yes, he was.
Which, by the way, side note, because I realize we're doing that thing when we talk about everything other than the content.
Yes.
This week we're talking about operations and systems.
Yes, so pay attention. We're going to get to that soon.
The connection was because Chad's out here because we're building out a new system inside our business.
That's right. And here's the connection, by the way, because the listener or the viewer might go, well, why would you have to fly all the way out to the country to do that? Why don't you just do it on Zoom? And the answer to that question, quite simply, is because you get things done better and a higher quality when you get out of your space. We talked about this at one of our last podcasts on the Mastermind Special Edition about there's power in deep work when you're not in your traditional environment. Also, why we're here as well.
Right. Yeah. So now we
got to go back. So, what was the environment we were in yesterday, Dan?
Well, we were at my house.
We were in your house, yes.
It's a beautiful
Yes, beautiful house, by the way. And this is why it's your fault, because your partner, Lori, has a twin, Miri, and I was not aware. While I've met them both separately, I've never been in the same room with them, and I was unaware of the incredible competitive nature that these twins have amongst one another. And so when I got there, Miri was convinced she made the best latte.
Yes.
She made me a latte, and it was amazing. Well, then that afternoon, Miri was gone. Lori came in, and she made me a latte. To which then she asked me which one was better. I had to respond that it was Miri, not her. To which she said, then, let's talk this through.
By the way, for context for the listeners, both Laurie and Miri were trained baristas. Yes. So they used to work in a coffee shop, and I have a proper coffee machine at my house.
Oh, wait, I could bring up the quote. So Dan yesterday, he's bragging about this, and my favorite thing that's come out of all of our meetings here is Dan saying, I have a vast array of beans at my house.
Look, if you love coffee, you understand, okay? So I have a real coffee machine,
yes.
I've gone to great lengths.
But here's the problem.
I don't want to say that was my reason for getting in a relationship with Laurie, but it's helpful.
But here's the thing. So as soon as I said, your sister's coffee was better, she said, let's talk this out. And how do you describe my ability to have relationships? My total incapacity to have a relationship
of any kind.
Yeah. So all of a sudden I realized I had to talk. I'm not a talk it out guy.
So you couldn't say no. And so how many cups of coffee did you drink?
Okay, so I had her coffee. Then Lori left. Miri came back at 3 and made me another one. So I was so hyped up on coffee last night. I didn't even think or consider going to sleep last night till probably 3 in the morning. 3 in the morning, and I still couldn't fall asleep. So I'm hurt.
Hence, today we need more coffee.
Blaming you. Yes, that's how we solve it.
I can't remember how we got on to being at my house, but it feels like we should get on with the podcast.
I think we should. Let's talk about what's in the news of the week.
Okay, the news of the week this week totally perfectly ties in with operations and systems, and that is that businesses can lose up to $1.3 million a year on inefficient processes. Look, this article just talks about how small businesses, Tova especially, fail to have processes, systems, workflow automation, and what that causes is things to get broken or to spend a lot of money on manual labor doing tasks that could be automated.
Yes.
So all this money gets wasted, and actually it's the majority of small businesses say that they struggle with implementing automation, which ties us quite nicely to... Go ahead.
Your mastermind coming up, where we're going to be actually talking about process. We actually have an entire segment talking about how to create process. I was going to push back on this, by the way. You said that, what did they say they have the difficulty doing? They have difficulty...
implementing automation.
My guess is they don't have as much of a time difficulty implementing the automation as they do developing the process to even implement. I think that's where so many people struggle on a consistent basis. Is how many small business owners do you know that repeatedly bitch and moan about having to explain things over and over again to their staff, or they don't have enough time, and then when you dig deeper and ask, do you have a process, do you have policies and procedures in place, the answer is no.
No.
Yeah.
And to be clear, to be fair, it's not necessarily easy. But the reason why I think it's not easy is let me back up.
By the way, not easy isn't a good excuse.
Yeah, no, correct. And that's what actually makes it a competitive advantage if you do it.
Yes.
Right? So there's two parts. You've got to design the process. Yeah, I've got the American thing going on now. Process. You've got to design the process. It's an English podcast, Topher. Come on. You're in England.
Yeah.
I kind of want Topher to do his English accent.
Let me have some water.
We had a dilemma yesterday about coffee, but now I'm back on mocha. But anyway.
Mocha.
It's a mocha. You call it mocha.
Mocha.
Anyway, whatever. So, what was I talking about?
We were talking about process.
So there's design.
It's not easy. Yeah.
So there's two parts. There's the design, and then there's the implementation. But you can't implement unless you've got the design. You've designed. Yeah. You've created the system. I can already, in my ears, in my phantom earpiece, Topher, hear Lisa Catto screaming at me now.
By the way, Lisa Catto, for those of you who don't know, is one of Dan's most beloved clients. She's one of your private mastermind clients, and she is the person that you love to fight with, and she loves to fight with you.
Well, I mean, it's a
by the way, there's this connected story with Lisa to this story.
Yeah, there is a worthy story. So Lisa from the Business Catalyst, she helps people implement systems automation inside of their business. And when Lisa, however many years ago, when she first joined my mastermind, she had two companies, but one company she had at the time, which she since exited, was called Marvel, and it was a heating and plumbing company. And for context, Lisa, you know I love you.
Oh wait, look into the camera. Say that.
Lisa, you know I love you.
You might want to actually hit all cameras.
Lisa, you know I love you.
There we go. All right.
And she is a princess. She's definitely a princess.
How is Lisa Catto a princess? She is a warrior.
Yeah.
Maybe she's like a princess, if you mean princess like the kind of woman that's in like House of Dragons, kind of badass princess. Then maybe
you know what, that's fair. And anybody who knows Lisa, So, but I will call her a princess, as in she's her background's not in heating and plumbing.
Okay.
From money, she'll be comfortable with me saying that. Her dad was very, very, very wealthy, and so how the hell did she end up in this heating and plumbing business? So because I knew Lisa.
Does she need a brother if her father's wealthy? I'd be happy to be her brother.
No, she's got a brother. In fact, she's got two. But the
is one maybe difficult to deal with?
Both of them could take you out. So how did she end up in heating and plumbing? And the reason is she observed an industry that was massively disorganized, massively plumbing, heating. A lot of the trades, construction, don't like tech. And they're enslaved to their phones, but they don't like tech and they hate workflow automation. And Lisa went, "This is brilliant.
Saw a problem?
I can fix it."
Yeah.
And she did an epic job. So the company was called Marvel. I believe still is called Marvel. But she came in and she had the most polished process. Because if you think you've got whatever she had, 20 vans on the road and parts and pieces and coordinating those.
The logistics of that would be insane. I've looked at companies like that and I'm like, I don't have the capacity to run a company like that. But I know it.
That automation is her superpower. And then we became legendary when she joined our mastermind because we made everybody else uncomfortable because we spent a whole year
I could fighting. See you two just going at it.
Correct, because look, you know when there's good rapport, you can say what needs to be said.
Yeah.
You can say as it is.
Oh, repeat that.
When you've got a rapport, you can say what needs to be said.
Yeah.
And so, I don't believe in a mastermind Topher where it's like, oh yeah, good job, oh yeah, great,
Right,
and everyone's faking and it's a facade and
it's a rah-rah pat on the back.
Right, and everybody knows Lisa, and on me it's like, oh, we'll be blunt. And to the point where people are like, holy crap, that's abrasive. Yeah. And I hated this business. But not for the reasons,
business, the construction
correct,
business,
Marvel,
the plumbing,
but not for the reason that you'd think, because she'd automated it, so because she'd built it and made it and grown it, she was in love with it, and I just saw it as being a huge time suck away from her other business, which was doing this automation and helping other businesses put those systems in.
Interesting. How many times do business owners have multiple companies, have that one company that whatever reason they love,
and they won't let it go, right, especially in today's culture of like, grind it out, stick it out, and there's a place for that, but there's also a place to go, you know what, and so my argument for a year, so imagine this, she paid me to join my mastermind because she wanted to further develop the business, and then I basically spent the whole year telling her this business is a piece of crap, sell it, get out, be done. And
she fought you on that for a while,
for all year,
yeah,
right, and but at the end, the way I viewed it is I said, Lisa, you're smart and I'm right. Go away and think about it. So that was blatant plagiarism of a Charlie Munger quote. Apparently that's his comeback to Warren Buffett whenever they disagree.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And there you go. There's my Warren Buffett
slipping.
Yeah. So, and ultimately she exited that company because my argument was the opportunity cost. She was developing this business, but it was painful and she was fighting an uphill battle. And then she moved over to the business that she's primarily focused on now, the Business Catalyst, which then, of course, exploded, grew rapidly.
Which, by the way, is now she also found another industry that is horrible with systems and process, dentists.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of a side note. I mean, this is more a marketing piece. Perhaps we'll talk about this, Topher, as a seed of...
I think we should charge her, by the way, for this podcast, because
for the promo?
Yeah, for the promo. We need to make some cheddar on the side for this.
100%. Lisa?
At least free dental care? Come on.
Yeah, you know where we're at. So it's about Avatar. So dentists and heating and plumbing, they both have the same problems. And you could argue any business has got this problem called automation and systems.
Yeah.
But actually, she was fighting a too heavily ingrained thing in construction, and it was less likely to change, whereas in dentistry they were more compliant, more willing to adopt tech, and therefore
and required, by the way. I mean, that is an industry which is tech is just controlling it.
Right. And ultimately, I mean, construction on follow, but it's just so far behind, and therefore she found a zone. So the comment to viewers is really to think about: are you targeting the right? Are you going after the right target market? Sometimes the exact same skill set deployed towards a different avatar has a radically transformative effect. So really, the news of the week just relates to you are hemorrhaging money on average, 7 figures, because of the lack of systems.
By the way, total side note, I have a 3D printed tooth in my mouth.
That is the most random side note, but kind of cool. How did that happen?
Well, remember a couple of episodes we were talking about how you lost a tooth and I'd cracked one or something?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I cracked a tooth and I came in, and normally, they put like a temporary crown on it or whatever, and I just, they took they had my tooth for my x-rays, and they literally 3D printed a tooth. I sat around for about 30 minutes, and then they put the new tooth in.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
we are living in the future.
Yeah. I was like, "How'd you get that tooth?" And you print it in the back.
By the way, there should be another segment to this podcast. It's like Dan and Topher's health ailments.
It's a totally separate podcast. The aging men.
Nobody wants to listen.
Yes, yeah. We would have doctors listening to it because we could be leads. All right, let's push on. Let's talk about the fail of the week.
Fail of the week this week is Made.com's collapse. Made.com's collapse. So
Made.com is if I believe that, because that's not really as well known in the States, but they're
it's an online furniture retailer,
like Wayfair.
I don't know what Wayfair is, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
And we'll edit that in. It'll be seamless.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what they do. Homeware.
But I mean, here's the truly stunning thing, Tove. Like, if you look at this company's collapse, just last year it floated on the London Stock Exchange for £775 million. So the market cap,
$750 million.
$750 million. Even in today's
money.
inflation crazy world, that's still a fair chunk of change.
Yeah.
So that was last year, right? So 2021, and just last week, it's gone in, or well, at the time of recording this, in the last couple of weeks, it's gone into administration, and Next, which is a high street retailer in the UK, who's also got an online presence, bought the brand, the website, the IP for £3.4 million. So from 775 million to 3.4 million. So
in less than 1 year.
In a year. How the mighty fall, right? And if you look at it, there's two arguments about how did this happen. Typically, it's big ego,
and there's got to be some bad ops and systems going on there somewhere.
Aggressive driving for growth, and definitely ops and systems. I mean, if you look at this article, there's just all these requests of orders, refunds, problems, and you've got a business model that's got inherently tight margin.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously, pandemic, online. Everybody's shifted online, so it's got much more competitive. The margins are tighter anyway.
What year was that?
Exchange.
Because a lot of furniture companies actually did really well during the pandemic because people wanted to start refurnishing their homes because they were staying there more often. This is going on right now.
Right.
How on earth did they mess that up? Well,
think about it, because it's kind of obvious. Like, let's pretend the market for online furniture, and I don't have the stats, so I'm making this up to be illustrative, have gone up 50%. So like 50% more money is being spent online for people buying furniture online.
Yeah. Okay,
you go, great, that's great if you're in that business. Not if the amount of competitors entering the space goes up by 100%.
Interesting. Yeah.
So what happened was some of the retailers that weren't online or were online but were relatively weak online went, holy crap, we now don't have a choice. We have to shift more aggressively online. So you can say it's supply and demand, i.e. they are competing for the same, it might be larger, but the same customer base online, but now there's more competitors. Therefore, the weak members of the herd get culled. Wow. They get left behind. And in this case, it was May.com. So 399 job losses, 12,000 orders outstanding. Those people are not getting their money back. At least not from May.com. They might get it back from their credit card company.
Jeez. All right. Well, we've talked about the news. We've talked about the fail. Let's talk about the hero of the week, which is a really cool callback to what we talked about, why I'm here, because we understand the value of getting out of your environment to create cool, creative ideas, and that is Nick Bolton.
Yep, hero of the week, Nick Bolton. So I mean, look at this picture. This is just amazing.
You know what? The picture's cool, but what I think is cool is the text next to the picture.
I suppose it is worthy of explanation.
Yeah.
So
you're being modest. I'll plug you. That this happened because of your mastermind.
Yeah, exactly right. So Nick had been in one of our masterminds. So Nick runs the Animas Centre for Coaching, the largest live coach training school in the UK, and is also available in other countries as well. So very well run, very profitable business. And he was at a mastermind meeting, and he heard Matt Hall and Jill Kelly from Making Stuff Better, who are previous heroes of the week on the podcast. And one of the things that they did, because they were at opposite ends of the UK in terms of where they live, they bought an apartment in Glasgow.
Yes.
And they saw it as a company investment because it saved them hiring hotels, right? And they said, okay, we're going to rent it out on Airbnb when we're not there. We're going to and tremendous, smart, savvy buy.
Essentially turned an expense into an asset.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Excerpt from Romancing the Balance Sheet, right? If money goes out of your company, it's either as an expense or it's to turn cash into an asset.
Yeah.
And so they turned an expense into an asset. And Nick listen to this.
Yeah, read the
example.
quote. Yeah.
Yeah, so he said, excited to share that we have completed on the purchase of the apartment that will become our full-time film and podcast studio today. Thanks to Matt Hall's story of buying the Edinburgh property. He says Edinburgh, but I'm pretty sure it's Glasgow. Yeah. I was inspired to realise my cash was better deployed somewhere other than propping up Barclays. Right? And it was...
That's an epic story. It's just such a great testimony to the power of masterminds.
And somebody said, well, hold on, why are you buying an apartment for a film and podcast studio? And Nick literally said, I want to be create an environment that's inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? Back to the point. Yep. And the fact is, by the way, Topher, research proves... There's research to back up that you are better off, that meetings are more productive depending on what it is that's being discussed, but strategic meetings, complicated meetings, not just functional handover stuff. Complex business strategic meetings are better in person than on Zoom, undeniably.
No question about it. There's no way that you and Chad and I would have been coming up with the creative flow that we've had over these last couple of days if it would have been on Zoom. There's just no way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is why when I hear people call into your company and they say things like, well, you know, what's being covered at the mastermind? I want to say you're focusing on the wrong part. It's not the content that we pre-create for your masterminds. It's the conversations. It's the interactions. It's the genius things that happen when Nick and Matt are not Matt. Was it Matt?
Yes.
Yeah. When Nick and Matt are having dinner that night,
right?
And and then that conversation that happened in the mastermind continues further and starts creating.
Correct. It's the percolation. Yeah. It's the rapport. It's the your unconscious going to work. I mean, look, podcasts are helpful. We're on a podcast right now, but the fact is, if you're listening to me, I know you're not paying complete attention, right? Like so because you're driving. So
for the record, I'm in the room with him, and I'm not paying complete attention. Sorry, that was just too easy. You set that one up way too well for me.
You're welcome. I'm totally interrupted my thought. I've completely lost it. Yeah. So it's helpful because you can reach people en masse, etc. But the fact is, you're not going to get the same level of output because you're appropriately concentrating on the road. Look at the car in front. Pay attention to the car, or whatever. But when you're on Zoom, let's be honest. You're on Zoom, even if you're really attentive to the call, it's so easy. Oh, pop-up notification. Oh, flicks to my email.
Max 50% attention span.
Right.
So on a good day.
It's not as productive.
Yeah.
People act like people are precious about their time, and they should be, but they act like all time's equal. We're not optimally productive. Like, if you're in the room, be in the room.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's research to back this up, as has been collated in a upcoming, soon-to-be published best-selling book.
Really? Who would be publishing this book?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, Topher. So I've just proud to say I've now got the completed draft of my next book with no title. It's a book with no title, but effectively I've been trying to prove or disprove you become like the 5 people you hang out with, but specifically finding the research, and a whole research team work on this in different areas, and what specifically that does that mean?
Yep.
How many people should be in a group?
What's the optimal number?
What's the optimal size?
Are you going to tell me that now, or do I have to get the book?
You have to get the book, obviously. How long the meeting should be, right? How long the meeting should be, like what you should cover, when is criticism helpful and when is it hurtful, when is praise helpful and hurtful, and so on and so forth. So like the different facets of what makes masterminds effective.
When is praise and criticism? When does criticism help? I have a feeling there might be some anecdotes from our interactions in the book about that.
Yeah. Apparently, mutual respect is important, so we got to work on that.
Yeah,
or I do. Anyway,
all right. Let's move on. We talked about the news of the week. We talked about the fail of the week, the hero of the week. Let's talk about books, my friend. Something that you and I are very close to. We love, and this is a great book.
This is a classic. So you want to talk about a business that's epic at systems? Dell computers, right? It had a 10 years. In the 90s, it grew. I forget the percentage, but at such a rate of knots. In the early 90s, it was nowhere. By the year 2000, it was the number one seller of personal computers in the world.
They're still up there. I'm sure they've got to be.
I don't know what the current stats are, but they're still pretty darn big.
Yep.
And the other thing that Michael Dell is famous for. So what made the company official?
Well, by the way, the title of the book is.
Oh yeah, thank you. Play Nice But Win.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, he's got 2 books out, biographical, and this is the more recent one, Play Nice But Win. And specifically, what I love in this book, in the start, 2 things. In the start, it details about the operations and systems and how critical that was, right? Because Michael Dell's not building damn computers anymore. He started out that way in a door room building a computer, but he had to build the systems and how he was able to orchestrate that and make that work so that you would order on the website.
I was going to say, he also redefined how you bought them. Right? Like, he was the first one who came up with the idea, like, why don't you actually order them online exactly as you want them with all of the features, and you'll get them within what? Back then it was maybe a week.
Well,
maybe less.
I think it was 3 days. But and here's the point, because this part 1 and then part 2 is even bigger. Like the biggest tech leverage buyout in history in 2013. But what happened was he didn't have the cash. Small business growing, didn't have the cash, and it's a stock-intensive business. And you're having to buy stock, put it all together, ship it out to retailers, sale or return, and it was just killing him.
Yeah.
So he figured out how to sell direct, and then he realized, well, I still need to stock myself, so it still causes a problem with cash. Right? So then what he did after that was he made it so that you would order your custom PC by Dell.com. Should be getting... Not just Lisa. Michael Dell should be saying this.
We should get some new computers.
I'll drop him a note after this and see what I can do. So you place the order, and only when you place the order, automatically, he made all his suppliers operate within, I think it was a 45-minute drive of the company factory, which it wasn't in Austin, I think it was in Round Rock, Texas. To be a supplier, you had to be within this perimeter. So what would literally happen is you would order, and the individual parts would automatically be ordered from the suppliers, who would then ship them to the factory.
So they could literally get them that day within, by the end of the day, if not by the first thing in the morning.
It was definitely within 24 hours. They would put it together on day 2 and ship it out day 3. That's why I think, if memory serves me right, it was 3 days. Like, you order, everything gets ordered, next day it's here, gets put together and checked, and then shipped out. And it was like, holy crap. So that's covered in the first part of the book. But the second part of the book, which is...
But wait, let's stop there, right? Because honestly, like, the people watching this podcast or listening to this, don't just let that go by. Like, ask yourself, how could you restructure the logistics of your business to speed up the delivery time?
Yes, definitely.
Right? Yeah.
And one meta level above Tova, it would be to say, how could you... your biggest problem, how can you give the customers what they want? So if you think about it, he solved his cash problem, but also what he wanted, what customers wanted, is speed.
Yeah.
And they also wanted it to be personal to them.
Yep.
You don't have to schlep all the way to the store only to see what computers they happen to have in stock.
Right? Which you may or may not want.
Correct, which may not be right, or then you have to order one, which then takes 6 weeks.
Yep, to get the same generic one that they had on display.
Correct, right, and so he cut that out, and in cutting that out, he gave the customer what they wanted, but he was also able to save a load of money, some of which...
A ton of money. If everything's within 45 minutes, a ton of money.
Yeah, I think he decreased his stock by 800 million, which basically freed it up to put into cash, which could then be used to grow the business, right? Because it wasn't tied up in inventory or stock, but also the savings that he made. Some of those savings he made a competitive advantage because he passed it on to the customers, right? So it was like, I can now sell for less than competitors.
Faster service, more affordable service,
and it all came from saying, holy crap, I can't compete with the big boys and girls because I've got no money. Genius. And that's why, love or loathe Dell computers, the man is a genius. And he talked about taking a big bet. So he took the company public, and Dell's had highs and lows over the years. Like he's had longevity, which most
any tech companies can be having,
right?
Yeah.
So he's had highs and lows, but he recognized in 2013 the company was undervalued on the stock market, so he raised the capital. I think, darn it, I want to look it up. I think it was 39 billion. It's similar to the Twitter buyout fee.
I was just thinking,
I think it was 39 billion.
I think he got a better deal than Musk.
Yeah. And so it was the biggest tech leverage buyout in history, and he took the company back private again. And now he, in addition to Dell, he's also got one of the biggest. One of the, I think it might actually be the largest, or it's one of the top 2 or 3 private equity funds.
Mm-hmm.
What he's created with all his cash. So the man's, and if you read him today, he's active. He's talking about the future. He's talking about providing all the technology for space companies.
Yep.
And you're gonna go, you know what? He's just getting started. I don't know how old he is, but I think 60-ish. But the boy's just getting warmed up. And hell, if my boy Warren can still be playing it big in his 90s, this guy's only 2/3 of his way through his career.
He's got a long way to go for sure. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's go through a quote of the week, my friend.
You could say the Godfather Godfather of systems.
You should say the Godfather of systems. No question about that.
W. Edward Deming, and he says, if you can't describe what you are doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. If you cannot describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing.
It's such a brilliant way of phrasing that too, right? Because if how many business owners use fake excuses? I don't have time to write a process. I can't be bothered writing a process. When reality is, it's probably they don't even know what the hell they're doing.
Right, and therefore, the consequence of that is, even if they're doing it well, it's gut feel, right? Yep. And it stays in their head, and then of course there's no leverage.
Yep.
So inherently you've capped the size of your business.
Yeah.
So
and then they go into what's that movie quote? I think it was from Guardians of the Galaxy. It was the guy who started. I don't know who's the soundbite that says, "I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well."
Well, yeah. Look, it sums it up perfectly for me. Like you ultimately you've got to know what you're doing, and that's why this podcast here, Topher. Because if you want a better business, you need to become a better business owner. I'll say that again since
I'm into that, my friend. Say it again since you
couldn't speak.
Couldn't speak it.
Need more coffee.
Yeah.
If you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner.
Well said, my friend.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.